And so they're going crazy. And I'm like, what? Like, how? Paul George.
Yeah, I get issues with this one, Chris.
I was so bracing for the Jaren Jackson slander from Kevin O'Connor.
Yeah, well, we can get to him and his fake blocks soon.
much to my surprise, I was met with Paul George slander, and I was like, oh, that's a minor win. So Paul George, who's averaging 23, 6, and 5, 3.5 turnovers. I mean, having a good year, but
yeah, he's having a good year.
There's like nothing particularly significant about his year, right?
Anthony Edwards is leading the entire league in minutes per game, tied for the league in games played. George has missed a third of the Clippers games this season. Ant is the engine of the Timberwolves this year. He's been excellent the past 6-7 weeks. De'Aaron Fox, who we've talked about a ton this season on this podcast, him and Sabonis together are the engines of Sacramento. He's been unbelievable, having an efficient, high-volume year, busting his butt on defense individually, flying around. Paul George he's good. He's very good. He's Paul George. It's another good Paul George year. But if you're factoring in responsibility for their teams, if you're factoring in games played, to me, Ant and Fox both should have been the choice over Paul George.
Really broke my heart on the Fox thing because in our semi-bold predictions to start the year, one of mine was the Kings are going to break the streak, much like the Seattle Mariners just did, and they will be a NBA playoff team. That one is going so much better than I could have ever fathomed. The other portion of that was, and Fox will make the All-Star team. I have kept all of my De'Aaron Fox stock through all the slander. Last year, Simmons did a podcast, and they named him amongst the worst contracts in the whole league. And I almost drove off the road because I've always loved De'Aaron Fox. And I really thought that he was going to get rewarded with this year. And I do believe he should have. And I believe the same goes for Anthony Edwards. Fox is, how do I say that? It's a little more understandable to me, but it is more egregious to me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So let me explain. Understandable because you've got a guy on your team that made it.
Yeah, they got Sabonis.
So now,
and a lot of guards too. SGA, Dame, Ja.
It's always tough to get to.
Yeah.
Right? It's always tough to get to. So you've got it, even subconsciously, the Kings have a guy. But their season has been worthy of having two, in my opinion. And so I think he was hurt by that because there's another guy on his team.
It didn't affect the Milwaukee Bucks. It didn't affect the Boston
you're
Celtics.
Right. Or the Memphis Grizzlies for that matter. But I absolutely am with you on Edwards also. Like those are 200% real debates worthy of having and debates that I would say can be won in most cases. Just like we said on the other side, right? If you put the name Drew Holiday up and we're going to have the debates on who is more deserving of these guys, I don't think Drew Holiday wins a lot of those. And I think that is true of Paul George. I also think that's true of Jaren Jackson. Let me tell you something, Kevin. Now, I love having kids that are involved. Like they're fans. And so I'll tell you, I will never forget this as long as I live. I was at my kitchen table eating dinner. I was the last one to eat. They had already eaten. And so I was at the kitchen table and the announcements started for the All-Stars and I'm watching it, whatever. And the kids are in there and they hear Ja's name because he's been announced on the Western Conference. So they like come in there. And when they got down to that last spot and said Jaren Jackson Jr., I almost fell out of my chair. I couldn't believe it. And the kids are going crazy because they know Jaren. They love Jaren. And so they're going crazy. And I'm like, what? Like, how? And I'm telling you, I had Jaren Jackson on my show 2 days ago. He didn't think he was making this team. And so it was just such a shock. So if anybody wants to say he don't deserve to be there, he shouldn't be there, there's other guys that should be there. Okay. Like, I'm not going to fight about that because, look, I would not have been yelling on this show that he was a snub, so I can't rightfully tell you. You know what I'm saying? Like, he'd lose arguments.
All right, Chris, then turn it around. Tell the listeners why the coaches got it dead wrong.
I don't think that from a coach's perspective, they know his impact. And I do think that people have paid attention.
Mm-hmm.
The people that have paid attention have seen. If you want to talk about impacting winning,
he does just that. Yeah,
that's what he does. They have the second best record in the Western Conference. He is having an all-time great defensive season, like not just a good one, an all-time defensive season. Go look up the numbers. When you talk about impact, you can look up the counting numbers or the advanced numbers. He is having one of the great defensive seasons we've seen. And in the modern NBA, a guy like that's that amazing on that end that cannot be played off the court is a very, very special thing to have. Meanwhile, I mean, he's an efficient offensive player and averages 17-7. But he's making that based upon his defense. And so I'm not going to cry about defense getting rewarded in this particular case. And honestly, I saw people saying about the AD stuff. Like, I also don't mind them rewarding winning. I don't. And Anthony Davis is part of a team he's played, 28 games? They're 25-28. So then you say, yeah, but what's the record with AD? The record with AD is 13-15.